What do you even do with a Call of Duty game these days? Serious question. For all parties, developers and players alike, it doesn't even feel like a game anymore to me, because no one has expectations for it beyond another one each year. It's just something that exists through sheer averageness. Each iteration is less about innovation and more about temporal cosplay, shuffling between World War II, the Cold War, and modern settings with all the nuanced differentiation of a corporate slideshow. I don't know how devs keep making them and players keep buying it. Imagine the developers staring at blank design documents, their nascent wizard beards growing more impressively existential with each passing moment of creative paralysis, looking over the fossilized remains of 2 decades worth of used-up ideas and wondering what's left to cover. Black Ops 6 feels like an elaborate performance piece where the core directive was do anything, besides make another Call of Duty game. And the result? A schizophrenic experience that reads like a focus group had a midlife crisis. There's a lot of insecure offerings, but they never nailed down a single concept. You have things such as a nostalgic time period that players actually grew up during and had formative moments in, jingoistic warfare that removes any nuance from the real-world conflict they borrowed, an open-world section that gives you choices on which order you'd like to tackle the same objective 3 times, a Casino Royale-style heist mission, a stealth section where the game pretends it's a mix of Deus Ex and Hitman, and just to truly break the mold, survival horror, a genre this series understands about as well as a 5-year-old comprehends driving. For the players, this is an exercise in generational melancholy. This series is old now, and so are you. It may get a brand new game every year, but when a series releases yearly for 2 decades, you can't help but notice how it's aged along with you, and you're not going to enjoy looking at it too closely any more than you do yourself in the mirror. Long gone are your days of post-school Xbox 360 lobbies, where casual racism and kill streaks are the primary social currency. Now, you're an adult, gray-haired, and whose friends have all stopped playing since they have terrible children addicted to Fortnite, leaving you to navigate voice chats where phantom taxes and mewing are apparently meaningful discourse. Some people might compare Call of Duty to Madden, and I can see the obvious similarities. A yearly installment that barely changes anything except for a roster, and die-hard defenders who live vicariously through the fantasies of a life full of masculine accomplishment they could have had. But if we must draw comparisons, forget Madden. Call of Duty is the Simpsons of video games, a franchise that persists more through institutional momentum than creativity. You're perpetually surprised it still exists, wondering who actually is consuming this content and why. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the perfectly chiseled, hyper-muscular, impossibly photogenic soldiers perpetually posing in Call of Duty cutscenes. And imagine if a gun magazine, an insecure senatorial campaign commercial had a love child. These aren't soldiers. These are brand ambassadors, walking constitutional amendments with perfectly chiseled jaws. I have expected every cutscene to conclude with a gravelly voiceover declaring, "I'm generic military protagonist, and I approve this mission." We've all come to accept that a well-lit room just doesn't suggest that people inside it are serious about the discussion, haven't we?
You disobeyed a direct order, Mr. Marshall, when it was clear your op was compromised.
With all due respect, sir, you weren't there.
With all due respect, so what? That's every mission you're sent on. You don't get to change the orders because a CIA director isn't there to hold your hand and assess the situation on the ground, you self-righteous prick.
We were in position near the Iraq-Kuwait border. Small team, me, Harrow, and Case.
Writing World War II and modern warfare plots must be easy in comparison to the Cold War setting. With World War II, the work of saving the world and being heroic has been done for you by actual history. And modern warfare just needs to be as jingoistic as it possibly can. But Call of Duty's attempts at depicting the Cold War and the subterfuge involved have resulted in a pharmaceutical-grade imagination of what spycraft must be like. Every game is another plot about who the traitor will be this time. Just take the opening of this game. During the Gulf War, Marshall, Harrow, and Case were sent into Iraq to extract Saddam Hussein's Minister of Defense, Alawi, when a rogue faction of the CIA called Pantheon appeared and derailed the mission, which is odd, since Harrow leads the very organization attempting to sabotage the mission that she is simultaneously participating in, while being fully aware of and collaborating with Marshall's impromptu extraction plan that involves killing the Pantheon soldiers in their way, which would be a blow against the mission of her splinter cell within the CIA, and would likely dissuade other Pantheon soldiers from following her orders if she's killing them like this. And that won't be the only time she acts in a way that is clearly meant to keep you from suspecting her, but ultimately makes it look like she's playing a lobotomized version of spy chess.
Let me get this straight, Mr. Marshall. The group you claim to be, the Pantheon, was a multinational, heavily armed paramilitary force that showed up out of the blue.
Instead of being incredulous, maybe you could look into some air traffic reports. One doesn't simply teleport squadrons of soldiers and helicopters through the radar screen of an active US war zone. All of those Pantheon choppers had to come from somewhere and had to go somewhere afterward.
At this point, you're told to wait for backup, but you decide to play cowboy instead.
We had to act fast. Our window was
Miss Harrow,
closing.
did he or did he not disobey your order?
I'm actually on Livingston's side here. Marshall decided to get Alawi out by any means necessary, which meant shooting his way through US and European operatives even though the only word he had to go on when it came to their identity and threat was Alawi, a source about as reliable as a used car salesman with a criminal record. He spent all of 5 seconds thinking about the situation. They almost got Alawi out when Adler shows up and kills him. According to him, the CIA is compromised and he's just a fall guy. But Livingston finds their story hard to believe, even though they did capture Adler and bring him in. And Livingston himself was the one to get rid of the Pantheon faction within the CIA years ago, so we should at least be troubled by these assertions. Also, I don't know why Harrow is supporting Marshall's story so much. She wouldn't want the CIA to start looking into the splinter cell she leads.
I can cover your asses on my end best I can. But if things go sideways again, you're on your own.
Real helpful of Harrow to cover up their activities so they can get busy getting in her way. And later she even reveals that she was the one who pushed for their suspension. But she had no reason to do that either, since they had nothing to do with Pantheon or its plans. Had she not gotten them suspended, and then covered for them during the suspension, there would have been no one to stop Pantheon. This is less a coherent plan, and more of a Rube Goldberg machine of narrative self-destruction.
Bishop takes Rook. Of course, Woods knew what it meant. Adler was pointing us somewhere. The Black Sea.
Adler's Bishop Takes Rook message was a code phrase for a former KGB black site on the Black Sea in Bulgaria that they can use as a staging ground for operations should things ever go bad within the CIA. The Black Sea isn't exactly near any of the locations they'll be traveling to, which makes it a terrible location for time-sensitive international espionage, especially since Bulgaria wasn't exactly a major travel hub after just leaving the Soviet Union. They may as well designate a staging ground in the Mongolian steppes so these guys have no issues traveling through unfriendly airspace anytime they want. It suggests the game's geographical understanding was sourced from a particularly unhinged game of Risk. Footprints and fingerprints don't work under a blacklight. You have to sprinkle some fluorescent dust on fingerprints to reveal them. And footprints wouldn't work at all unless Adler stepped in something.
He believed the Pantheon was developing a new type of weapon, with plans to unleash something the world had never seen before.
Can you wait before you start introducing things like new weapons? I mean, I know that's going to be the case, because what else would a shadowy cabal be doing in a Call of Duty game? But you don't have to spell it out since the game spends an awful lot of time showcasing it later. Build some suspense about what they're doing, would ya?
Savati Dumas, the person you're gonna meet. Still no idea why Adler was in contact with her, but a lead's a lead.
They know nothing about anything, but they know the name of this lady, Savati Dumas, who Adler was speaking to before his capture, so they decide to set up a meeting, and surprisingly she agrees. I would think if Adler went dark, Savati would assume the worst and think this was Pantheon trying to ambush her. The team leave it to Case to become the unpaid accountant of this espionage circus, scrounging cash to fund a CIA safe house that Adler and Woods apparently conceived with all the forward-thinking financial planning of a Greek life college dorm.
The bell tower on that church offers an open view of Yannick's yacht. He's throwing a party while his men count money in the church.
Sev stashed a sniper rifle at the top of a church tower for Case to use. Could she have maybe picked a sniping location that wasn't controlled by Yannick's men as well? He has to fight his way out of here after killing the guy.
They called an emergency meeting at Chateau de la Haute Lune. 3 guild leaders will be in attendance to smooth things over with Pantheon.
Case kills one guy, and the rest of the criminal guild hold an emergency meeting in just a few minutes to smooth things over with the Pantheon. How would Pantheon already be aware of Yannick's death if he died after he ended the phone call with them? This could probably wait until morning. Unless Case kept his eyes shut, Sev just got dressed in front of him and she didn't seem to mind. You could consider this as Sev being so professional that it doesn't bother her, but I choose to believe it's because Call of Duty males are the most closeted gay men I've ever played. Consumed with a job, no family, no hobbies beyond hyper-focused masculinity, and no personal lives. Crocodiles sunning themselves on a rock possess more sexual tension than anyone the cast of Call of Duty ever displays.
Get to the safe room's antechamber on the 2nd floor. An alarm will go off. That's okay. The guild doesn't know you, so your best option is to surrender and play along.
Sev's plan is for Case to get himself captured since they probably won't kill him instantly. Just hit him in the face a lot. I can see why Sev volunteered Case for this.
Oh, look at that. You're a long way from home, Case. This man is extremely dangerous. Kill him.
This plan also gave away their anti-Pantheon activities, since a Pantheon member on the other end of the camera identifies Case. Not that Pantheon will ever attempt to do anything about them. While Case was recruiting Sev, Marshall recruited Felix Newman, a German computer whiz. And you have to believe the hype, because he manages to hack into CIA networks and learn where they're keeping Adler without an internet connection. Since this is 1991 and Bulgaria didn't have internet access until 1992.
DC Black Site. There are blueprints as well. It is located
Underneath Capital Station, I assume you're aware of this.
CIA black sites are typically found outside the continental US since it makes them easier to hide and helps them avoid breaking the law by not being on US soil. See the CIA during the Second Gulf War for examples. They certainly don't build them in Washington, D.C. under Capitol Station.
Just a few modifications. Primarily, the addition of a miniaturized RF transmitter and, of course, a more powerful battery.
Adding a radio frequency transmitter to a film camera wouldn't allow you to send photos digitally because the photos are on undeveloped film inside the camera roll.
I was just on my way out. I don't know why you're here exactly, but you need to be very, very careful. Langley has assembled a team to track the three of you down, and they may even have eyes here tonight. If you are spotted, forget about suspension. Livingston will literally bury you alive.
Harrow is here and should know exactly what Case is up to because Pantheon recognized him taking out guild members with Sev. And she would know Adler is being kept in the black site beneath it because she sent Pantheon agents in to kill him tonight. But she still has the heart to warn Case about the CIA on the lookout for them here and doesn't warn her own men that Case will be showing up inside the black site soon. The only way into the black site is to crash Bill Clinton's campaign event being held there and somehow steal a US Senator's retinal scan. Sev figured out 3 different ways to blackmail Senator McKenna into a photo op in just a few minutes. How many controversies can one senator bring with him to a campaign event? You know politicians normally do photo ops for campaign contributions, right? Maybe if the team had arrived when the event wasn't winding down and actually had some money to spare, this would have been simple.
Time to use the mic on that camera of yours. Act like you're taking pictures.
I'm not worried about risk. I'm worried about the reward. We'll get his money.
The microphone inside that camera came from Sev's Walkman. Have you ever listened to what an old Walkman mic sounds like even when recording right in front of your mouth? It's not adequate to act as a shotgun mic and pick up audio from across a noisy room. The senator's mistress is planning on blackmailing him for money and hands her valet ticket to one of the senator's security who's working with her to go retrieve the tape from the car. I guess the plan was to confront Senator McKenna with the only tape here at the event and not do a phone call after making a few copies.
Top me off, will you?
Your wine glass was full, lady. Topping you off anymore means you're sucking that wine off the counter.
That's really all you're after? I'll just need a few minutes. Would you mind keeping Miss Johansson busy until I'm back?
Mrs. McKenna believes that a journalist would turn over a juicy sex tape of her husband, the senator, with his assistant in exchange for a single photo op with him. I get the feeling Bill Clinton was only featured in this game so they could play off those conspiracy theories where Hillary had people killed. You can't steal a retinal scan with a film camera, and you can't view or scan a photograph by looking down the barrel of the lens. Marshall did have a plan for once they got inside the black site, but Pantheon is already down here and has killed most of the CIA personnel, which is fortunate since Marshall's team would likely have had to do the same thing, and I don't think they considered that. Instead, they get to save some of the survivors, which will oddly have no effect on the CIA later blaming them and making them the most wanted men in the world. To get past the sealed door, Case places an RV bomb inside of a vent, though when I drove the RC car back, I could only see Marshall in the room, with Case nowhere to be seen. Pantheon was here to kill Adler to ensure Livingston and the CIA didn't learn of them, but their actions here would have given away their existence by gaining access to a secret CIA black site and killing everyone inside to get to Adler, who was the only known person claiming they existed. Case, Marshall, and Adler lead dead Pantheon members all over the black site as they escape, but all of those identifiable bodies don't clue Livingston into the fact that there's a rogue cell inside the CIA. I've always felt that enemies in Call of Duty tended to go down realistically, since a bullet or two will drop just about anyone. But in Black Ops 6 they introduce elite Pantheon operatives who have special abilities and health bars that take multiple magazines to bring down. I don't know why a soldier who just hides behind cover and sends explosive RVs at you needs better body armor than a soldier who has to stick his head out. Why didn't Pantheon just kill them with the explosion instead of making them fall through the elevator shaft? Granted, all 3 of them should have died in the fall, but you could have had explosion plus fall damage. A Pantheon agent gets a drop on Case as he makes his way through a loading gate. Sadly, I guess his gun didn't load in with him, because the guy tries to wrestle Case instead of shooting him. I sure as hell don't recall one of Bill Clinton's campaign events turning into a shootout in DC and everyone having to evacuate. Probably would have been mentioned somewhere during the election. Now that the American flag emblazoned, fully gassed up motorcycles are our only way out, I have to wonder what was the exit strategy originally. Were they just going to walk out with Adler? Maybe shake hands with Bill Clinton on the way out? None of the cops surrounding Central Station chase after them, but plenty of Pantheon agents and trucks who were also just outside do. Weird how that worked out.
Listen, Troy. They are pinning the attack on you, all of you. Woods, Case, Adler.
How does the CIA account for all the dead Pantheon members left in the facility, or the survivors that Case and Marshall rescued telling them what actually went down inside?
You're on Interpol's most wanted list, red notices all around.
And yet they'll have no trouble leaving the US as wanted men along with a man considered a traitor and then flying back to the US again in a few days.
Alawi knew the Pantheon had a presence in Iraq as part of a technology exchange with Saddam Hussein. Pantheon gets cover in facilities, Hussein gets access to an experimental weapon.
But Alawi didn't know what the weapon was?
No. Only they're calling it the Cradle.
Why was it so important that you killed a Wally back in Iraq then? You were willing to be captured and die just to take him out, and what he knew wasn't much. Just that Pantheon was helping Saddam develop biological weapons. The CIA or Pantheon getting their hands on a Wally wouldn't have mattered.
They haven't destroyed the palace yet, but that's about to change. British SAS forces are on the ground hunting mobile Scud launchers, and they've marked our palace for massive aerial bombing.
How do you know every detail about a coalition military operation in Iraq? You guys are cut off and wanted by the US, yet you know they're about to bomb the very palace you plan to infiltrate, and can somehow get yourself into an active war zone despite being wanted by the CIA, all because Adler knows a lady in the British SAS. Also, the British SAS didn't accept women into its ranks in '91.
This will be our base of operations for now. Here, you won the straw vote and get to carry the TAC map.
Call of Duty is filling that open world itch and experimenting with small levels where you get your pick of main and side objectives, except all three main objectives are the same, blowing up a Scud launcher, and the side objectives are a big waste of time. Because in other games, side quests would net you rewards you get to use for as long as you like, but this game doesn't have progression like that. Your rewards are only usable in this mission, and most of them, like the stealth bomber, make it obvious you are not needed by the British SAS to destroy Scuds when the Air Force could be handling it quick and easy. Pantheon and Saddam let the vial of this biological weapon lying around inside one of his bunkers. This is actually how easy the CIA assumed we discover weapons of mass destruction in the sequel to the Gulf War a decade later. The Cradle was developed inside a facility in eastern Kentucky, which was quarantined and abandoned after a biological outbreak there. There's just a facility out in the middle of the woods that is full of leaking bioweapons and classified intel, and no one is guarding it to keep people out, nor was there any attempt to clean it up and dispose of the site. Eastern Kentucky isn't that remote. Rednecks on ATVs would have already cleaned this place. The elevator Case jumps onto collapses, and he falls to the bottom of the shaft, which is flooded enough to save his life. But his gas mask breaks and he breathes in the biological weapon that contaminated this facility. Turns out Cradle forces you to play through multiplayer zombies mode during the single-player campaign. A truly terrible weapon. Was the CIA taking notes from Scarecrow when they developed this stuff? Because I swear it's the exact same thing.
Be careful. Try to limit any more exposure.
Limit his exposure? Do you want Case to hold his breath? Because horror is a very specific thing and not exactly the wheelhouse of Activision. This is about as scary as the tropes it's full of. Mannequins that reposition themselves when you're not looking, hordes of zombies, and boss fights against monsters. But there's no mystery here, because you know it's all a virus-induced hallucination, and you get far too much ammo to make it suspenseful, so it ends up being an easy shooting gallery that goes on forever, because they also borrow the scavenger hunts from horror games that require you to collect multiple colored keys to get through a door. They even tossed in a grappling hook for the boss fights, something that might have proved useful in later missions, but Case doesn't keep it. You can't just give someone a grappling hook for one level and then take it away for the rest of the game.
The staff was absolutely thrilled with the results of last week's Cradle trial. You're exceeding all of our expectations. In fact, we think you're ready for the next step.
There's a plot point running through this section that Case was once a test subject for the Cradle and has no memory of it, I think. It's kind of hard to figure out what a mute character remembers and doesn't remember, but this attempt to connect Case to the danger facing the US doesn't really go anywhere. And just how did Case ever become a CIA operative if he was once a test subject for a dangerous bioweapon that turns people into crazed killers? The guy hears voices in his head. That's enough to fail a CIA psych evaluation. Obviously this is all in Case's head and there's no monster there, but why are the auto turrets shooting the imaginary monster as well?
Remember your training, Case 1. You can never speak of the Cradle program or the Pantheon division. Never.
The voice in our head seems awfully informed on Pantheon and the Cradle, but even though Case knows about all this, he can't simply tell the team about it since he's also been conveniently brainwashed into keeping silent about it, meaning this reveal serves no purpose. Despite being on crazy kill gas, Case's problem-solving skills remain functional, even solving puzzles like time switches for pumping water. So I'm assuming the keycards were real, and Case had to find them all over the place like inside a bathysphere of all places. Would those just be left lying around like that? The voice inside Case's head admits to being the one who sabotaged the facility and released the virus inside it, which you would think would be another strike against Case ever joining the CIA, since he killed a lot of people and destroyed a lot of expensive government property, and just proves him to be a massive liability. Good thing this biological weapon wears off after an hour or so, and isn't contagious, because no one shows any concern that Case might infect others or go kill crazy on them. The CIA left entire tanks of the Cradle down here after shutting down the site. If the government is this stupid with its weapons of mass destruction, I better not see anyone had to put effort into getting their hands on nukes and other COD games after this. Nobody in the 90s kept videos on floppy disks due to them only having 1 to 2 megabytes of storage on them. This footage of Cradle being tested inside Iraq would have to be far lower quality to fit on one. The video they recovered from Saddam's palace also reveals that Harrow is behind the development of Cradle and the leader of Pantheon, and this is apparently not enough evidence to clear their names and have Harrow arrested.
No. There's still a few more months.
I said tail!
At some point, this game needed to detail what the relationship was between Harrow and Marshall. The game doesn't develop them further than they were close. Because in this series, sex is for communists. Capitalist patriotic Americans only care about doing their job well and killing other Americans for the right cause.
No one here believes your contagious case. But a little more space.
For real? After watching that video, you guys should be quarantining Case.
I was able to isolate Gusev's audio, this moment in the background. Now.
Still waiting for B-24, a wire from Fucina.
B-24, a wire from Fucina.
Felix is able to isolate a bit of audio of Gusev speaking about a wire transfer from Fucina and a B-24, which Sev recognizes as a casino controlled by the Lutazis. That's 2 leads in one video. This is a CIA production we're talking about. Did they never think to edit this footage before sending it to Saddam? B-24 referred to a safety deposit box inside the casino. Pantheon funds itself through laundered casino money, and they figured the box will lead them to Gusev, the Russian scientist who re-engineered Cradle to be more effective. He was hiding somewhere in Iraq, so they plan a heist of the casino to get inside the vault, which happens to be the only place Felix can override security for the safety deposit boxes. A weird place to keep your security nexus, but if you can break into the vault, then you should be able to break into an archive room which isn't as well protected. You can open a safety deposit box with a blowtorch or crowbar.
Chips, please. Your boy here is feeling real lucky.
Where did Marshall get the money for casino chips? I've spent every dollar I have on upgrades to the Rook. You're telling me that wasn't necessary and the leader of this team could have pitched in?
Do you have any weapons that need to be checked?
That sure is a weird question to ask someone in Europe, since they don't normally allow concealed carrying of firearms. And why walk in with it if you know they're going to check it anyway? Just take those cards out of the brochure and slip them inside your sleeve out in the open like casinos are not heavily monitored by cameras for cheating. Meanwhile, Case is down in the basement clipping alligator clips to wires without first cutting away the sleeve to make a connection, and this gives Woods access to the surveillance cameras. If Case could talk, he might complain about how every plan they come up with involves him taking a beating for no reason. He only has so many teeth, you know.
Where I'm from, we teach our kids to win with grace and humility.
I'm afraid you are not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. This is a game for adults.
I can tell the writing is first pass when all the obnoxious Europeans quote Hollywood movie lines to the American before he beats them at something. Cheating is cool and badass, unless it's in a Call of Duty multiplayer mode. Give us your phone number, asshole. We know where you live. So Marshall is going to use that money to fully upgrade the Rook, right? Are the slot machines only inside the High Roller Club? That doesn't exactly strike me as something a high roller wants to play, and I think they could have caused a malfunction in any machine and gotten them to call for maintenance. All of this was done to steal a casino dealer's keycard and reprogram it. Seems like a lot of wasted effort, since he was keeping his card stuck to the outside of his pants. They probably could have found a few that had fallen onto the floor somewhere. Once given the reprogrammed keycard, Sev's job is to head for the armory, load up a car with weapons, and send an elevator to bring Marshall and Felix down. They could have just followed Sev down here since she isn't supposed to be here either. They even smuggled in C4 charges. This feels like an important step in the heist that was glossed over, since neither of them had C4 on them previously. The safety deposit box is right next to the vault. Use those thermite charges and explosives to blow it open and save a step. It's going to sound an alarm anyway. Even if you survive standing only a few feet away from detonating C4 charges in a room, it's going to leave you deaf.
It's a frame-up. Pantheon's activities will point right to Saddam Hussein. Goose is heading to the Kuwaiti airport as we speak.
Oh, that airport's in a war zone. Even if we head your way soon, can we reach it?
I have a CENTCOM connection in the area. It might be willing to help us.
The dossier proved that the casino was laundering money for Pantheon, with wire transfers to Gusev in Iraq. By the time Adler reaches the location, Gusev has fled, but there was one scientist remaining with a canister of Cradle who tells Adler that Gusev is headed for the airport as they speak. Somehow the team of wanted traitors in Europe can fly out to Iraq during a war and reach Gusev before his plane leaves. The most wanted man in America standing in the middle of a US Army base smoking a cigarette, by the way. Why even make them wanted if Adler's connections allow him to continue to work with British and US military as he pleases?
That's him. Top lab rat for an army of mercs. Goose is developing the Pantheon's bioweapon. You'll know what they're planning.
Since you know Gusev plans to leave from the airport, why not just bomb the airstrip so his plane can't take off? Then he would be trapped here. I almost had to give up playing Call of Duty here, since I ran into bugs during this level that would crash the game every time I loaded it up. I had to wait 2 weeks before I could play through it and finish it. I've come to take glitches like this as a game trying its hardest to dissuade me from playing further. Gusev isn't in the passenger plane, but being loaded into a military cargo plane instead. I'm just wondering what Gusev is planning to do once in the air. There's no way coalition forces would allow a military cargo plane to take off from a besieged Kuwaiti airport. Adler and Case had to make a suicidal break across the tarmac despite all the Iraqi soldiers in their way. Then an Iraqi tank crew bails right in front of them, and they get in that to fight their way through to shoot the plane as it's taxiing to take off. The game lets you, a CIA operative, torture a man in Iraq for information. But please keep actual politics out of my video games, please.
Jane Harrow brought me a biological agent, the Cradle, from an American lab. The Pantheon wanted me to make it infectious, more violent. The victims tear each other apart.
Cradle is a virus that doesn't behave like a virus. It appears as a gas in the air and causes instantaneous effects in anyone who breathes it. But an infected person can infect anyone else, and it fades away in just an hour or so. So there's no contagious period or immune response, since Case should have antibodies from previous exposure to it, but was still infected back in Kentucky.
Vorkuta! A full Russian prison camp. It became a bioweapon lab years ago, before it was shut down. But it still has what they need to scale up production of the Cradle.
How do American CIA agents occupy a Russian base in the heart of northern Russia to produce a bioweapon, and the Russian government is unaware? Even post-Soviet Union Russia wasn't so bad off that American forces could secretly occupy a base within their borders. Sev is sent in to scout out the base and disable any defenses, so she steals a Pantheon uniform from one of the men and walks around freely. The only female member of Pantheon I know of is Harrow, who leads it. All the foot soldiers have been male, but this disguise works flawlessly. Sev has options when it comes to sabotaging the chopper, radar, and anti-air missiles. She can sweet-talk her way into disabling them, or just strap C4 to all of them and blow them away when she's ready. Except she didn't bring any C4 with her on this sabotage mission and has to find it in the base. How do you not bring the one thing you'll need for sabotage? Once that's done, Sev has to use the security cameras to find where they're keeping the Cradle. Oddly, as I was looking through a security camera, I was able to pick up the body of someone I silently took down earlier in the same position.
We've done what we came here to do. The weapon has shipped. Now we evacuate before the CIA or the Soviets learn we're here. Clear enough?
I don't think that's going to be a problem. And if it were, you would have picked a better location to manufacture more Cradle in the first place. It's not like the CIA could do much about a base within Russian borders without starting a potential war. How did you guys fly a Black Hawk helicopter this deep into Russia? Hell, where did you even get a Black Hawk helicopter from? For a group of wanted ex-CIA operatives, they are amazingly well prepared.
Okay, divide and conquer. Case left. Sev with me.
Case, you know the drill. Go that way and get punched in the face until we rescue you.
I respect you, Case. I really do. You put everything into your work, your principles.
It's a little late to try and convince anyone currently attacking your base to come over to your side, especially the guy who doesn't talk and suffered at the hands of Pantheon when he was a test subject. So are you guys flying on the chopper all the way back to Bulgaria? Because choppers don't have that kind of range.
She had something embedded in her forearm, a device. Felix thinks it's a tracker of some kind.
They know where we are?
We should assume that.
Harrow had a tracker inside her arm, so they don't have much time before Pantheon comes for her. And since they don't even think of torturing her in the same way they did Gusev, Adler injects her with one of his magic MK Ultra drugs. This one induces schizophrenia and fragments the psyche. In Harrow's case, she returns to how Marshall knew her before she joined Pantheon, while her dark side is given a leather jacket and crazy hair, and haunts her mind palace as she attempts to piece back a broken mirror from her childhood so she can tell them the target. It's kind of odd that the drug Adler injected Harrow with has the exact same effects Cradle had on Case, making Harrow hallucinate zombies and creepy mannequins. This finale is not only reusing gameplay from the secret CIA biolab, but reuses several levels, because the series doesn't have enough money to afford additional assets for its final level, I guess. I guess the guy who killed Harrow's parents that night wanted to make it personal, since he holstered his gun instead of shooting her father, so he could toss him around for a bit, then pulls out his gun to shoot him. While the good side of Harrow is running around inside of her own head, starting generators and fighting off her all-around cooler bad bitch self, the rest of the team have to hold off a veritable army of Pantheon soldiers attacking the Rook. Since Pantheon apparently has the ability to move hundreds of men and tons of equipment into a European country within hours to assault a location without the government catching on.
From you.
I can take over now. Of course they were hiding something, Woods. They're always hiding something.
Harrow knew that her parents weren't just victims of a simple home invasion, so she eventually joined the CIA and began looking through every top secret archive she was given access to. It's safe to assume she already suspected the CIA was involved in their death, but put that belief aside and happily worked for them. But she never found anything, until one day when someone slipped a floppy under her door that contained the classified files on their murder. Her parents were CIA agents that were executed by the CIA for undisclosed reasons. I guess the classified documents didn't mention details on what her parents were doing, and Harrow showed no curiosity for why the CIA wanted them dead. But the revelation drove her over the edge all the same and into Pantheon, where she would eventually come to lead it.
Targets eliminated.
Anything else?
Negative.
Harrow also misremembered a detail of her parents' killer, believing he sounded like Adler. Harrow was taken under Adler's wing when she joined the CIA, so she should have misremembered it sooner if it was true. Did she only start misremembering the voice after she read the report? Evil Harrow explains Pantheon's plan. They're going to release Cradle in the US, blaming it on Saddam. But the real goal is to discredit the CIA leadership for the intelligence failure of a CIA bioweapon being used against America, so Pantheon can take over the CIA. Because the CIA is corrupt and only a group of people within it who are willing to release a bioweapon on their own country can right the wrongs. I'm sure this argument made sense in their own heads. Then again, we saw a version of this plan play out in real life, since Saddam was blamed for an attack on US soil a decade later and was believed to possess biological and chemical weapons, and the CIA was involved in collecting that bogus information and was found to be torturing people in Iraq. And nothing happened with the CIA as a result of that discrediting. Why didn't Pantheon begin their assault on the Rook with heavy armor and helicopters? Their tactics have been on the same level as an airsoft team. The Cradle is under the Capitol building and will be released on Harrow's orders. And once this virus is released, the Capitol building will be overrun by bloodthirsty people bent on destruction. And that's supposed to disgrace the government? This game released a few years too late for me to buy into that.
Someone else will take his place.
You.
Me. The Pantheon will finally control the institution and cast them out.
Pantheon knows there's an election happening in just a few months, right? Bill Clinton is going to be picking the new director of the CIA, and he's not likely to pick anyone from the group that shot up his campaign event.
I'll give the order once we're airborne.
Why wait a few minutes until you're in the air? Just do it now. Does it matter? Woods cannot be killed by anything in these games. He only gets more disabled.
Hey! Can't let it get away! It's up to you!
Case, we've been training you for this. Go get punched in the face one last time. For America.
I shouldn't have protected any of you! I pushed Livingston for your suspension! I wanted you out of the way!
But they weren't in the way until after they were suspended, and you covered for them after the suspension, which let them do all this. What did you think they were going to do with the cover you gave them? Go on vacation?
Case, he responded. Livingston's cleared out the Capitol. Everyone's safe. It's over.
And that's how the day is saved. Case strangles Harrow in a cradle-induced rage, and then the weapon is disarmed off-screen because Pantheon doesn't have anyone else who can order the viral bomb to be set off except for Harrow.
Your reach is greater than it's ever been. We need you, Woods. All of you. I can provide whatever you need. Accommodations, resources, cash, additional manpower. All of it off the books.
So a rogue, unaccountable splinter cell within the CIA nearly set off a biological weapon in DC, and in response you want to form another unaccountable splinter cell within the CIA. Maybe Pantheon was right. You really should not be in charge of this organization.
The Cold War may be over, but the world is more dangerous than it's ever been. The nature of our enemy is unclear now.
We're reaching the point where the only people we're allowed to fight in video games are Nazis and Americans. Hey, welcome to the end of the video, where I tell you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. See you next time.